Today, we had the pleasure of hearing from Chip Huth as he presented on creating an anti-fragile organization as part of our Forging Resilience in Chaos limited webinar series. And now I have the privilege of speaking with Chip and answering some of the more deep questions that you posed to us both during the presentation and that you submitted upon registration. I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to talk to Chip today. And Chip, I'm going to cut right to it and give you the first question. So the first question we got, and one that I think is especially great and frankly that you're really well qualified to speak to, and I think you are for all of these, is how can we change our organizations in order to create or foster anti-fragility?
Yeah, well, that is a great question, Sarah. And I will tell you that in my estimation, it starts from the top down. Now, it doesn't have to. Anyone at any level of the organization, because we operate in a complex environment, an environment characterized by complexity, small inputs resulting in unpredictable outputs. Anybody in the organization has the power to affect anybody in the organization exponentially. But ideally, it would start from the top down. Ideally, it would be the leaders. The leaders have to be willing to reduce whatever dissonance exists between the way they want their employees to regard the customer and the way they regard their employees. It's too easy for leaders sometimes to objectify their employees and see them as a means to an end regarding profit margins and things like that. We have to understand that we have to regard our employees as leaders in the way we want them to regard our customers and their coworkers. We have to literally lead out by example. And so that builds in anti-fragility, because what you're doing is you're cascading that outward mindset out in the whole organization. You're living out those values. People get a sense of if you want to know what's important to somebody, don't pay attention to what they say, watch what they do, right? And so that's what we need to be doing as leaders constantly to help build that within our organizations.
But is anti-fragility about believing a hard situation is going to make you better, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or does it involve action?
Yeah, well, look, some things just kill you. So what we have to understand is that it does require action. Actually, this concept of anti-fragility is a personal invitation to me as a person to be accountable for moving more toward that anti-fragility on that spectrum, right? So I have to actually do things. Yeah, I mean, this is an action-driven process. I have to actually to set and achieve small little milestones in my way to build up incrementally in 1% improvements. Like everybody out there listening, everyone that we talked to today in the webinar, everyone you'll meet today, if they took an honest look at their life, an honest look at the way that they work and the way they are with people, they could find one area that they know if they made a 1% improvement in that area, they would be exponentially better. And so that's the goal with anti-fragility. You have to step up, find what those things are, and then start working toward making improvements in those areas. You have to do the work, right? So it's like people are always thinking, well, I want some formulaic approach to losing weight, or some formulaic approach to getting stronger, or some formulaic approach to being a better leader. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. We're surrounded by chaos. There are many, many variables we don't control. So we really have to just do the work. We have to share, we have to put forth effort to experience and put ourselves out there in chaotic situations and learn by failing, learn by falling down, make those adjustments. So yeah, it's definitely requires a hard personal effort. And I want to say it's ongoing too, because, I mentioned that Chinese yin and yang symbol, right? That I mentioned that briefly in the presentation, how that was an illustration of the interplay between order and chaos. Well, if you remember that symbol, you pull it up on the Google, you can look at it and you can see that there's this middle path that winds through that symbol. And our goal is to stay on that middle path, right? 1 foot in chaos, 1 foot in order, constantly making micro adjustments, paying attention when we list too far one way or the other. That's the goal, is the middle path. But remember, the secret isn't staying on the path. The secret is using the outward mindset to more quickly realize when we've fallen off. Once we recognize we've slipped, we can make the correction.
So you said 1% incremental improvement. Anybody can do that. What are some examples of you having done that? What are you doing every day? What different things are you doing? And maybe even more importantly, how do you know which thing to improve on?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny you should say that because what I've been doing lately, and this isn't for the faint of heart, you know. So I've been practicing this for a long time. But, you know, there's people in your life, if you're really honest about it, there's people in your life when you see them coming or the phone rings and you see their name, your first instinct is to ignore the call, to ghost them, right? Or if you see them coming, maybe you just pretend you're on a call so you don't have to interact with them. What I've been doing is I've got those people. I've been seeking them out. I've been seeking them out. I've been actively finding time, carving out time to sit with them, to listen to them, to really try to understand their perspective. Look, I'm telling you, everyone in their life, listening to this, that you know you have somebody in your life that challenges you, somebody in your life that really it invites you to be inward. They invite you to be inward. And so what you need to do, well, or at least what I found to be helpful, is to seek them out and really make a project out of getting to know them as a person, getting to understand them, right? It doesn't mean, look, just because you understand something doesn't mean you condone it. But like when I can get inside someone's head and understand why they might be cynical, understand why they might be burnout, understand all of the things that are pressing on them that might drive them to that negativity, it helps me be much better positioned to help them, right? So you can't prescribe a solution for a problem if you haven't properly diagnosed it. And so that's one thing that I've been doing lately. And I don't always succeed. I don't. But it's been very rewarding in the times that I've been able to manage
it. Speaking of, so we kind of started on this personal, what can I do level, and you are a leader and have been a leader of different organizations for many years. So how can the outward mindset foster a culture of wellness, resilience, and teamwork within an organization?
Yeah, well, it goes back to what we said before, right? When people feel seen, they feel like they matter, right? Then they're much more likely to be collaborative. They're much more likely to be innovative. They're much more likely to give you feedback. So the outward mindset allows me to be vulnerable as a leader. I can step up. I don't have this need to be seen as this amazing leader that knows everything. You know, once I've shed that part of my ego and I can step up with an outward mindset, be appropriately vulnerable and honest with people, that sense of reciprocity that we all operate under as human beings comes into play, and people are much more likely to be candid and open with me, right? So that's forging that collaboration you're talking about. And as far as wellness, look, you're not even going to know there are problems if people don't trust you enough to share them. You have to create safety in the organization. One thing we've done on my team at an actionable level is we've created what I call a radically inclusive environment, meaning there are no closed door meetings. The only closed door meetings that take place in our team revolve around discipline or evaluation. Those are very private things, and you need to honor the people involved in those things. You shouldn't share that information. But everything else, every leadership team meeting, every strategic meeting, it's all open to anybody, from the newest member to the most senior member to attend. And so, you know, it's all out on the table, right? That complete transparency really invites people to that. There's not so much of our unwellness is driven by anxiety and uncertainty around the unknown, right? Like there's just, you know, what are they doing? What are they planning back behind the curtain? We're opening it up. Matter of fact, you can have a voice in it. You might not speak at all the meetings if you're not on the agenda, but you can leave with questions that you can email, or maybe even schedule another meeting that spins off of that if it's important enough to do that with, right? Or you can't get your question answered another way, but that's a big part of it. So a lot of our wellness issues, I feel, are driven by the fact that we don't do a good enough job of informing people of the resources available, informing them of the plan, letting them contribute to the plan, getting that buy-in, and it creates stress. And most people struggle with uncertainty. It's a true superpower to be comfortable with ambiguity. If you can sit with ambiguity and be okay with it, it's like a superpower. I put it up there with patience and humility and forgiveness. That's, I hope that answers the question. I feel like I'm hitting around it.
I think you're doing a pretty great job. I think most of us know that your background is heavily in public safety. So I wanted to ask a question here that's specifically geared toward the outward mindset in public safety. So how does the outward mindset enhance situational awareness and keep our public safety workers safe?
Yeah, man, that is a great question. A lot of people think that they tend to think about the outward mindset as being soft and kind and the inward mindset as being hard and rigid. And really, again, the distinction obviously much, much deeper, right? It's not about what we're doing. It's about how we're seeing others and what we're doing. That's the distinction, right? So look, the outward mindset, well, let's talk about the inward mindset for a second. When I'm in an inward mindset, I am really making tactical decisions in a virtual reality. I'm not considering all the factors. I'm not seeing things as they are. I'm seeing them as I am. I'm projecting onto all of these events, all of these people around me, my own subjective biases. Now, we do that to an extent as a part of being human, but I'm really over-investing in them, right? I'm doubling down on them. So I'm not seeing things as they are. With an outward mindset, you and I, we're here. We're on the same level. I'm not above you. I'm not below you. We're right here. You matter like I matter, which means I consequently value your adversarial potential. Who am I more likely to lower my guard around or turn my back on? Somebody that I see as an equal or somebody that I think is less than me, right? And in law enforcement, what do we see constantly? It's never the top 10 most wanted people that hurt us. It's the people you would quote unquote least expect, because those are the people, when we objectify them, right? So they're no longer a person, they're a 90-pound crack addict, right? They're no longer a person, they're just a pregnant female. They're no longer a person, they're just a 15-year-old juvenile. And once we start objectifying them that way and ignoring their humanity, we tend to be okay with lowering our caution flag, turning our back, right? We devalue their personhood and we subsequently devalue their threat potential. So we're much, much safer, right? And situationally aware when we're seeing the world as it is, when we're looking at the world and noticing that it's populated with people just like me, and that creates a sense of reality, if you will. And we can make decisions based on that, grounded in that reality that we all share, rather than the reality I create in my head when I objectify.
Next one, it's not so much a question as it is a quote, a comment that I would like you to comment on. And it is, you can ignore humanity, but you can't suppress it. It eventually comes forth. The only question is, do you get a refreshing spring or a destructive geyser?
Yeah.
How would you comment on that, Chip?
Well, that's pretty deep. Obviously, we've got some philosophers out there asking questions, but so I would say that that's true. Again, humanity is it's a natural occurring principle. We can deny it. I can objectify you. I can refuse to see you as a person, but that doesn't lessen at all your personhood, and it doesn't make you an object. You still are what you are. I'm just ignoring it. And so I think what the commenter is suggesting is, look, if I ignore you and you feel put upon and marginalized, when your humanity finally expresses itself, it's much more likely to do it in a volatile manner, right? Like, people don't like to be marginalized. They don't like to be ignored and oppressed. And that tension, that stress can build up. And when their humanity actually comes forth, it can come forth in a destructive geyser. It can come forth in a really overly assertive, aggressive way. That's where you get the people that you would least expect suddenly blowing up and becoming angry, right? It's like this pressure cooker. And then one interaction on top of another, and eventually they just explode because they can't take being marginalized and objectified any longer, right? Or versus, as the commenter said, if I'm recognizing your humanity on a regular cadence and we're working together in that way, we're working together as equals, right? Then your humanity is free to be expressed in collaboration, in innovation, right? In trusting relationships, because I'm leveraging that sameness that we have to actually build that collaboration. So, I think it's really important. It's a great comment, and it's a great illustration, a pretty graphic illustration of the different ways that humanity can express itself, and it's predicated a lot on what I'm putting out there. You tend to get back a lot of what you give. And so I think it's really important that we realize that. And the consequences, by the way, I always say that the cost of your good habits are in the present and the cost of your bad habits are in the future, right? Think about it. So like if I have a habit of training and working out, that's a good habit. And I got to pay the price right now. I got to press the weight. I got to run the miles. I got to do the crunches. Or crunches aren't even in vogue anymore. I got to do the work. My point is, whatever it is, that cost is right now and the benefits are later. in the form of good health, right? And conditioning. But bad habits, right? I could go guzzle a 6-pack of Mountain Dew right now and essentially be just fine now. But all those excess empty calories down the road are going to end up impacting me. It's the same thing with objectifying people, right? The cost of a routine objectification of others is going to be in the future. The cost of seeing someone with an outward mindset is in the present, in the sense that I have to actually be present. I have to actually recognize them as counting. And when I recognize you as counting like I count, I might be called to do some things, right? I might be called to some, in my mind, I might get the idea that I could be helpful to you in some way, which requires action. Of course, the irony in that is that we all know that the feeling of really helping somebody, it's worth the work, right? The reward is well worth the work. So sorry I went off on a tangent there.
All right, Chip, I have one more question for you, and I'm trying to ask it to everybody I'm doing the Q&A with. People who watch this, they want to have a takeaway. They want to know, what can I do today? I've just finished this watching this awesome Q&A with this amazing Chip Huth. What would you tell somebody who said, what can I do right now after I turn off this video? What's the most important thing for me to do?
Nothing. Like, I would literally tell them, carve out about 30 minutes and take a walk and just kind of process what we talked about. And in that 30 minutes, think about one relationship that you have, just one, that you know you haven't shown up in that relationship in an outward way. Think about what that person might need. Think about one thing you can do to kind of start moving the needle with that relationship, right? Process that in your mind. Get a game plan together. Keeping in mind, no battle plan survives first contact, right? There's always going to be modifications, but get a plan together. Decide what your first step should be, and then execute. Reach out to that person. Have a conversation. Have an appropriately social distance conversation, right? Whatever that looks like. It may be a phone call. It may be a video chat. But have a conversation with that person. And if there's anything that you can take responsibility for in that relationship, take it, own it, and see where that goes. See what happens. There's just no better way, I think, to begin down this path. Get a little momentum going with a tough, challenging relationship.
Chip, I love that. I will do that myself. It's been so great to talk to you. I love hearing your insight on everything. I look forward to the next time we can speak, and the next time I can pick your brain and get answers to all these deep philosophical and important questions. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay healthy, sir.